Sung Jinah is the perfect support for the wind team, and with her buffs makes it much stronger. But also she can do this by equipping the 4 set effect bonus of Burning Blessing for its up to 10% damage increase that it gets from Enhanced Blessing, as well as also the 4 set effect bonus of Sylph's Blessing, with this also providing a pretty decent damage increase of up to 15% extra elemental weakness damage dealt to your whole entire team, which makes this overall the best combo for you to use when you are using your Sung Jinah in the Hunter mode. But for other team fight modes like Guild Boss, you might want to actually use the Guardian set with Sylph's Blessing instead, because this can also give a 10% damage increase. However, when you are playing stuff like Guild Boss, it's a lot easier for you to have shields, so you can definitely have a much more permanent damage increase with it. And then finally, when you are in need of total power, you can just go for the 8 set effect of Burning Blessing. Which then does bring me on to all of your best main stats for all of your artifact pieces, and for her helmet, her body armor, and her ring, you'll want to go for additional defense or defense percent, however, additional defense will be better. And then for her 2 other most important pieces, these being her bracelet and also her boot main stats, you'll want to go for wind damage percent for her bracelet main stat, because of course she's of the wind element. But finally, for her boot main stat, in my opinion, defense percent will be the best, because it will help increase her shield strength, but you can still go for critical hit damage if you want to. Your best substats for your Sung Jinah are up next, and of course, you'll want to go for additional defense and defense percent as your 2 most important substats, because she is a defensive scaler. And some other really important stats for her are of course going to be the likes of your crit stats, getting your crit rate up to 50% with some surplus, as well as also crit damage, getting that to be pretty damn high, so then she can deal a good amount of damage. Then you have her final most important substats, where you have stuff like damage increase, defense pen, MP consumption reduction, and all of that kind of stuff is going to be very, very good for your Sung Jinah. Following up from all of that, we next up have all of your Sung Jinah's very best cores, and starting off with her mind piece, we do have the Eyes of the Watcher, and the reason for us using this is because this does actually increase the critical hit damage of her core attacks by up to 20%. But after that, we have the body piece, and overall, in my opinion, I think you should go for the Nameless Demon's Horn for the up to 10% max HP shield that you can get for 8 seconds after you do use your ultimate skill. And finally, of course, we have your spirit piece, and for this, you'll want to use the Teeth of the Watcher piece for the decrease in MP skill consumption by up to 12%, which is very, very good for her, because Jinah can use a lot of basic skills, so this is completely perfect for her. Then for all of your main and substats for these cores, you'll want to go for additional attack, defense, and HP for all of your main stats with your cores. And then when it comes to substats, you essentially just want to choose whichever kind of stat you're missing, whether it be damage increase, defense pen, crit damage, or even stuff like damage reduction can all be very, very good with your Sung Jinah. So now let's talk about all of your Sung Jinah's very best advancements and what you should go for. And in my opinion, the overall sweet spot for her is going to be her A2 because of the debuff that it does apply, but I'll get onto that in a little bit. Because first up, we do have her A1, and the only real main thing you need to note about with this advancement is the very first paragraph, because it says when the Gale Wings effect is activated or activates, your entire team can recover 100 of their mana points for every instance that was applied, and with Gale Wings being able to stack up to 3 times, it means your whole entire team can recover 300 mana points. Sung Jinah's A2 then is very, very powerful because it enhances the Wings of Freedom effect that she does apply to your entire team, which can now increase their basic and ultimate skill damage by 20%, as well as also increase their wind damage by 10%. But then it does say when the user's ultimate skill does actually hit, it can activate the unrecoverable effect on the target, which is the obviously 30-second duration debuff, which makes your target unable to recover HP. Moving on to her A3, and this is also pretty interesting because when the wind effect is actually activated, you can then also grant Wind's Touch, and this also applies to your whole entire team, so it's buffing everyone. And what this does is it increases the user's attack and defense by 1% and their basic skill damage by 0.5%, with it then increasing all of those 3 stats once more for Wind team members by the same values. Your Jinah's penultimate advancement, being her A4, is nothing really too special because for every Wind ally, the wind damage of your Wind team members will increase by 5%, so it's another 15% damage increase, but it's nothing really too crazy. And then at last, we do have your Jinah's A5, which starts off by saying when you use a certain skill, you can grant 1 instance of the arrow effect to your entire team, and on top of being able to grant another stack of the arrow buff when she does tag out in Hunter mode, she can also trigger something called the Serenade Arrow Disruption, which deals damage equal to 300% of your ultimate damage. And then as well, using this skill will reduce the cooldown of her ultimate by 60% and reactivates the Sudden Showers buff that she does have, which is something that she gets from her ultimate. Moving on, we now need to talk about your Sung Jinah's skill level priority and what your best skills are with her. And starting off, we have her ultimate skill, which is Stormwind Serenade, and this is by far her most important skill because she can use it within every single rotation, and will be leveling up to increase its damage multiplier all the way up to 6,869.25% of her defense's damage, but also to increase the healing from her Sudden Showers buff from 2.2% of her defense every second all the way to 4%. And then for her last two most important skills for you to level up, you're going to want to level up her first basic skill, Reverse Tempest Cleave, because you can increase this skill's damage to 2,727% of her defense, followed up by her second basic skill, which can have its damage increased by up to 2,661% of her defense as damage. Then for the rest of her skills, don't forget to look at the recommended skill level up order that you can see in game, which will give you all of the other information you need for your skills. So the next most important thing for your Sung Jinah is going to be putting her into the most powerful team you possibly can, because starting off we have your Lennart's Neiman as your main DPS, and also you have your Goto Ryuji as your main breaker. So starting off with Goto Ryuji, his main buff that he does apply is called Arrogance, which increases your team's critical hit damage and their basic skill damage by 20%, lasting for 20 seconds. And not to mention, he's one of the very best breakers in the game thanks to his first basic skill, Phantom's Heavenly Hurricane. Then as for Lennart, and the reason why he's the best main DPS is because of his massive damage multipliers that he does have with his basic skills, and he works perfectly with the unrecoverable debuff, which is what Jinah can apply, which then increases his damage by another 15%, making them perfect together. He increases your team's defense and crit damage whilst also granting them super armor, and if you can get him all the way to A5, he can even use his ultimate every single rotation, making him the best DPS for you to use. Your very best shadows are up next, and in my opinion, when it comes to your authority leader, I would personally recommend that you go for Egress for his up to 8% increase into your whole entire team's critical hit rate. Then for supporting shadows, you of course want to go for Serbi the Cerberus for the combustion debuff, followed up by either one of these 4 shadows that you can use now, with you either using Beru for his punishment debuff, you have Bestie for her defense penetration increase, you have Iron for his defense decrease, as well as also you have the brand new Shadow Skull, who also has a defense decrease debuff through the death flame effects that it does have. So then finally, let's talk about how to best use your Sung Jinah. And starting off with the very first part of her skill rotation, you'll want to bring her in using your QTE skill, of course, followed up by her first basic skill. This will then basically allow your Jinah to enter the Umbrella mode, so then you can then also use your core attack because it also does actually activate it. Followed up then by your second basic skill, because this increases the amount of airtime that you do have within your Umbrella mode. And then once you've done that, you want to repeat that same skill rotation of your first basic skill into your core attack and then into your second basic skill again. And after you have completed that skill rotation twice, your ultimate will be ready for you to use, and then you'll be able to use it to then activate her main ultimate buff. So then you can bring in your main DPS being Lennart, so then he can do as much damage as possible. And the final most important thing for you to note when using your Sung Jinah is basically with her QTE skill, because when the user uses this skill while Sudden Showers her ultimate buff is active, she can reduce the cooldown of her ultimate skill by 60%, as well as also just completely reactivate her ult buff. So you do need to make sure that you are bringing in your Sung Jinah before the Sudden Showers buff has disappeared, so then you can reactivate it, as well as also reduce her ultimate skill cooldown. So there you have it, that is how you best build your Sung Jinah. And overall, if you did enjoy this video or you just found it useful in general, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!